This is a Destiny video. Bungie just dropped a blog post and trailer detailing Strand, the 5th subclass coming to Destiny 2 with Lightfall in just a few weeks. I know the blog post is a little long in the tooth, but there's some really great information in there. So far, Strand looks like nothing that we have in the game currently, combining things like Warmind cells and stasis for a whole new type of combat. I've compiled all of the need-to-know information here for you to easily understand what is coming with Strand and some of the tidbits from Kevin Yanis and Luke Smith to hopefully make this as much of something to look forward to as I am. So without further ado, this is everything you need to know about Strand. Let's start with some basic subclass terminology. Creating an object with Strand is known as weaving. Defeating an enemy affected by Strand will unravel them. This is similar to things like ignitions with Solar 3.0. Unraveling enemies creates a tangle. Similar to a Warmind cell, tangles hover in place and can be shot to create an AoE explosion, dealing damage to nearby enemies. Guardians can pick up and throw tangles to cause deadly effects. Threadlings are explosive minions woven from Strand matter. These Strand buddies will run forward on the ground and jump onto enemies and explode. All subclasses can weave Threadlings into existence, but the Warlock subclass, the Broodweaver, has some bonus interactions with those, and we'll touch on that a little later. Strand has 3 debuffs that work similar to any other subclass 3.0 kit. These are Suspend. A suspended PvE enemy is lifted off of the ground for a brief duration and is essentially disabled. In PvP, suspended players are lifted off of the ground but can still move, albeit slowly, and fire their weapons to fight back, similar to Stasis Slow. Unravel. Attacking an unraveled enemy will cause threads to burst out of the target and attack other nearby targets. Once hit, that target will also become unraveled. This is similar to ignition explosions, spreading stacks of scorch, or jolt from chaining arc explosions. And then Sever. A severed enemy is less capable of affecting the material world, reducing their damage output as a result. This is just a really solid, full-up damage debuff against enemies. Strand is getting a new buff that we saw a peek of in the Weapons and Gear trailer last week called Woven Mail. While active, Woven Mail reduces incoming damage, though in PvP, this will only affect body shots. Headshots and melees are completely unaffected by Woven Mail. Strand is described by Luke Smith and Kevin Yanis as the first subclass in the game that actively rewards players for high APMs, or actions per minute. Previously, players would engage with subclasses in ways that would certainly benefit from quickly chaining abilities and build crafting into those. I'm looking at you, Heart of Inmost Light. But Strand is purpose-built to reward that type of behavior. They mentioned that the grappling hook, which is one of the 3 grenade options for Strand, has some more utility than just a new movement option. Performing what's called a grapple melee, either during or at the end of a grapple, will deal bonus damage, unravel an enemy, and push them backwards. While describing some of the combinations that are available to pull off, Smith said, quote, "I defeat an enemy with my melee ability and they unwind into a tangle. I grapple onto the tangle, which refunds my grapple, and snatch the tangle out of midair. I then hurl that tangle at a group of enemies in the distance, grappling onto the tangle again while it flies and pulls me through the air behind it. As the tangle nears a group of enemies, I slam downwards out of my grapple to suspend a lone enemy who's split off from the group, while the tangle slams into the rest of the group and explodes." There's a lot of these really cool dynamic interactions built into Strand that make it feel unique. This quote is exciting on its own, of course, but we also now have confirmation that grappling a tangle will refund your grapple energy, which is some very cool stuff. Okay, now let's jump into the subclasses because there's a lot to take in here. First up is the new Broodweaver subclass for Warlocks. The Broodweaver Warlock leans heavily into the Threadlings. While all subclasses can weave Threadlings and use them effectively, only the Broodweaver's Threadlings will return to the Guardian if they can't find a target. The Threadlings that return to the Warlock will go into what is called a perching mode, where they will condense down and orbit the players, I imagine like Void Buddy or Arc Buddy. The next time that player attacks an enemy, the Threadlings will then hop down and track the enemy to attack. Luke Smith said that his Threadlings, quote, "love me and want to come back and hang out with me." I love that. The Warlock melee is called the Arcane Needle, which is a deadly projectile which tracks targets, causing high damage and unraveling them upon impact. Warlocks will be able to quickly chain 3 Arc Needle attacks in a row, and we did see that in the trailer. Warlocks have 2 Strand aspects. Weaver's Call. On Riftcast, the Warlock weaves 3 Threadling eggs, which hatch into Threadlings when they hit a surface. Any perched Threadlings are converted to additional eggs. The second Warlock aspect is called Mindspun Invocation. This aspect improves several of the Warlock's abilities. Grapple. When you execute a grapple melee, the Warlock weaves 3 Threadling eggs from the target. Threadling Grenade. You can consume your Threadling Grenade to generate a full complement of perched Threadlings. And Shackle Grenade. You can consume your Shackle Grenade to gain a buff, creating a suspending detonation on every kill. The Warlock Broodweaver Super is the Needle Storm, a deadly combination of burst damage and area denial. On cast, the Warlock conjures Strand Matter into a fusillade of hardened spikes, launching them forward with a wave of their hand. The missiles will stick into enemies and the environment alike before detonating and reweaving themselves into an army of Threadlings that will hunt down any survivors. The only thing that isn't really elaborated on here is the Threadling eggs, or how many of them is a full complement, but I assume that this is either a Threadling spawning in the perched mode, or that it just drops 3 Threadlings on the ground. Either way, they won't go to waste if no enemies are nearby due to their return to cinder nature. Next up is the Hunter Threadrunner. The Threadrunner Hunter is all about agility and mobility, capable of dealing a ton of damage very quickly and even from mid-air. The Threadrunner's melee attack, Threaded Spike, has the Hunter hurling out a rope dart that bounces between enemies, damaging and severing them before returning to the Hunter. Upon its return, it grants melee energy for each enemy hit. Hunters can also catch the rope dart by pressing the melee input button at the right time, and perfectly timing that will earn the players an additional amount of melee energy. The Hunter Threadrunner also has 2 Strand aspects. The first is Ensnaring Slam. While in the air, press the air move input to slam downwards, suspending all nearby enemies. This is similar to the Hunter's Strand Shatter ability. The second Hunter aspect is Widow Silk. This aspect grants an additional grenade charge. The Hunter's Grapple ability creates a persistent grapple tangle when it latches, which fully refunds grenade energy when grappled to. Hunters can use this ability to set up chains of grapple points that either their entire team can use, greatly enhancing their ability to quickly move around in combat and or traverse the environment. The Threadrunner Super is called Silk Strike. When activated, the Hunter uses their grapple to freely move through the world in third-person view, while also throwing their rope dart to strike down enemies. Hunters will be able to use the grapple more often due to the Super, and the rope dart features both a light and heavy attack. The light attack is meant for single opponents and can be used in air and on the ground. When on the ground, the Hunter can chain attacks seamlessly. Hitting an enemy with the tip of the dart deals bonus damage, and defeating an enemy with it causes the enemy to explode. The heavy attack has the Hunter swing the rope dart around in a 360-degree arc, damaging all nearby enemies. As with the light attack, this can also be used either on the ground or in the air. Finally, we have the Titan Berserker. The Berserker Titan is all about untamed, in-your-face damage. The Titan's Strand melee ability is Frenzied Blade. With the press of the melee button, the Titan dashes forward and slashes at enemies with their Strand arm blades, severing victims and decreasing their damage output. With a default set of 3 charges, Titans can chain these slashes together for maximum offensive power. Like the other 2 subclasses, Titans also get a pair of aspects. The first is Into the Fray. Destroying a tangle weaves woven mail onto the Titan and nearby allies. In addition to reducing damage taken, this aspect also increases the Titan's melee energy regeneration while wearing woven mail. The last is Dranger's Lash. When the Titan casts their class ability, the Titan will blast forward a powerful ripple in reality, suspending enemies that are caught in the shockwave's path. We saw the Titan exotic in the trailer that actually turns this, instead of 1 wave forward, it is 3, so very cool stuff. The Titan's Berserker Super, Blade Fury, sees the Titan dual-wielding its fist blades and roaming the battlefield with ill intent. The Super's light attack is a supercharged version of the Frenzied Blade melee attack, and each light attack that connects increases the next attack's speed, which tops out after a maximum of 3 hits. In addition, connecting with light attacks also builds energy for the Super's heavy attack with each hit. With the heavy attack, the Titan hurls a pair of projectiles forward that seek out enemies, suspending and damaging them on impact. This, to me, sounds very similar to its Stasis Super, but I think we'll have to wait and see for sure. Unfortunately, it really does seem like Titans have kind of gotten the short end of the stick here. As for the classic Gnostic things like grenades and fragments, Strands will see 3 new grenades, including the Grapple, which is controlled with the grenade button. The Threadling grenade splits into 3 projectiles that weave into Threadlings upon impact. And finally, the Shackle grenade effectively acts as a bola, detonating in a suspending blast and sending out smaller secondary bolas to suspend nearby enemies. We also did see this in the trailer. While we won't know the full list of fragments until Lightfall drops, Bungie did tell us about at least 4 that are coming. They are the Thread of Ascent. Activating your grenade ability reloads your equipped weapon and grants increased weapon handling and airborne effectiveness for a short time. Thread of Fury, damaging targets with a tangle, grants melee energy. Thread of Finality, finishers generate threadlings. And Thread of Warding, picking up orbs of power, grants woven mail. So some of my thoughts on this stuff, guys. Strand really does seem to be the new Warmind Cells 3.0 in some ways, but cranked all the way up to like 25. If this is the reason they're removing Warmind Cells from the game, and it seems pretty obvious that it is, I'm perfectly fine with it. Strand looks amazing and a way better option than Warmind Cells are currently. Now there's a lot here that seems to lean into picking up orbs of power, which should be dropping in the world far more often after Lightfall, since things like Warmind Cells and Elemental Well mods are either going away or being reworked to lean into orbs of power instead. These abilities seem extremely strong on paper, especially with some of the uptime that I can imagine we'll be seeing at launch, but I'm excited for a few hectic weeks of PvE and Crucible, as long as Bungie can reel it in faster than they were able to on Strand. But, you know, who knows, maybe it'll turn out to just be right and won't need any serious adjustments like Strand did right out of the gate. My money, though, is definitely on the former being true. Some highlights for me as a Warlock main are definitely the Threadlings, which seem way more interactive and lively than I would have assumed based on some of the footage that we've seen so far. When we first heard that we were getting the ability to summon these little minions and they were just these little green stringy lumps on the ground, I was a little disappointed. I was hoping instead for something more like the Memory of Timur from Destiny 1, but now that we've gotten more info on it, I am super excited to have a bunch of little green Strand buddies running around the battlefield as a Warlock main. Titans, you unfortunately didn't get anything great yet again, but I'm not counting it out just yet. There's a ton of really cool little tidbits in here, and I think that as long as there are some fun Strand exotics for Titans to build craft with, I think that this could be a sleeper hit subclass. The ability to increase your speed while chaining hits in your super sounds super fun, so I just really hope that it's a solid add clear super at least. Hunters, it looks like you're getting a really cool mobility focused subclass like we wanted Arc Staff to be back when D2 launched, but didn't ever really quite get. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the cool combos you can pull off with some of these abilities and what builds are going to start wrecking havoc in the Crucible. Speaking of, my most negative takeaway is the fact that Strand is introducing another slow ability in the Crucible to fight players with. While I've never really been against it, I know that the community at large really dislikes slow and being frozen in place. But as long as there's a way to meaningfully avoid it with Strand, then I think it'll land okay. But unfortunately, time will have to tell on that one. But yeah, there we go. A quick breakdown on Strand and my thoughts. Hopefully this helped you absorb it a little bit better, understand it a little bit better. Let me know what you think in the comments and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video, of course. Make sure you stick around to catch a stream. I'm going to be streaming here on YouTube very, very soon. If not today, then this week, I promise. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. Until next time, I love you. Be safe. Have fun. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.